Believe it or not, I have sat on making this video series for over 5 years at this point, but hey, better late than never I suppose. So grab something to numb the pain as we revisit one of the most mean-spirited cult horror trilogies of the 21st century, Rob Zombie's Firefly trilogy. Consisting of House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and 3 from Hell, which will each receive their own video, this ghoulish saga tells the story of a family of psychopaths who exist purely to commit unholy acts of violence, torture, and abuse to whomever is unlucky enough to be in their way. As The Devil's Rejects implies, even Satan himself seems to have a limit to what depravity he would welcome through the pearly gates of hell, as the Firefly family pushes to the furthest extreme of human evil. So I think that's a pretty fair warning for what is to come. It is cruel, unrelenting nihilism through and through, as it demands viewers leave their morals and sensitivity by the door as they enter one of the purest homages to 70s era exploitation cinema that journeys from deranged backwoods-esque carnival theatricality to gritty satanic panic pulp crime thriller where all humanity be damned. The trilogy was written and directed by rockstar Rob Zombie, who initially rose to fame as the frontman for the cult heavy metal band White Zombie, which had a distinctly moody and macabre artistry heavily inspired by genre cinema. After going solo at the end of the millennium, Zombie attempted to branch into filmmaking by pitching a Crow sequel that was then rejected, and later found his iconic inspiration for his debut feature House of a Thousand Corpses after designing a scare attraction for Universal's renowned Halloween Horror Nights, which maybe one day I'll finally get to visit. His filmmaking track record is understandably extremely divisive, because while his passion for genre cinema is undeniable as he demonstrates a deviant eye for the historical transgressive underbelly of exploitation cinema in relation to its real-world subject matter, he often gets a little too lost in the sauce of his overindulgent abominations and derivative concepts. Despite having seen all his films, bar The Monsters, I've only ever covered his extremely divisive 2-part Halloween reimagining, which I felt was at the very least artistically ambitious, if indeed antithetical to what John Carpenter and Deborah Hill intended with Michael Myers. At this point, you've probably heard all the usual buzzwords to describe Rob Zombie's style as like an acid trip nightmare or a satanic music video, but ultimately the best summary I can give is that he is unapologetically an audacious edgelord. I mean, when your later albums are called Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser and the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy, you might not know what you're specifically getting into, but you can guarantee it involves a lot of hard drugs. I guess you could say, as tired as the phrase is, that his work is all style over substance, but his eccentricity is kind of what makes him so compelling, even if his storytelling is choppy, convoluted, and over-reliant on his inspirations. Nevertheless, if you have your own theories, thoughts, or opinions on any of the films in this trilogy, please leave them with me in the comments below, because I am very curious to see how people respond to this one. And now, as always, brace yourself for where it all began. Hi, it's Ryan from the future to tell you if you want to watch House of a Thousand Corpses or The Devil's Rejects but don't have it on a streaming service in your country, well, this video's sponsor CyberGhost VPN has the solution. A virtual private network protects your digital privacy and allows you to freely surf the web without restriction or fear of being tracked or compromised by your internet service provider, public Wi-Fi, or websites designed to sneakily and invasively snoop on your private activities. However, when it comes to watching my favorite films in the age of inflation and diminishing returns, CyberGhost VPN allows me to unblock geographical restrictions so I can get more value out of streaming services, including those not available in my country. For example, by selecting CyberGhost VPN's optimized streaming location in Japan, I can refresh Netflix and access The Devil's Rejects, or by switching to Canada and refreshing Tubi, I can access House of a Thousand Corpses. With over 100 locations to encrypt and rewrite your traffic securely, CyberGhost unlocks geo-restricted content in over 40 streaming platforms like Netflix, Disney Plus, and Paramount Plus, so you can get the best bang for your buck, and it works on 7 devices at the same time, so you can even share it with your friends and family. CyberGhost VPN has over 38 million users worldwide and over 20,000 excellent reviews on Trustpilot, making it one of the best VPNs available. And by using my link in the description, you can get the best deal of just $2.03 a month plus 4 months for free, which is an 84% discount overall. Plus, with a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 customer support, you can try it completely risk-free with nothing to lose, and by doing so, you'll also be helping out my channel as well. House of a Thousand Corpses tells the story of 4 teenage 30-year-olds on a road trip during Halloween Eve 1977, when they encounter Captain Spaulding's Museum of Monsters and Madness, and also fried chicken and gasoline. The 2 men, Bill and Jerry, whom we will refer to as Dwight from The Office and that guy who hosts every AMC post-show podcast, inform the eccentric owner Captain Spaulding that, with the company of their partners Mary and Denise, they're writing a book on obscure and exotic roadside oddities, and are open to suggestions on where to go to next. As luck would have it, after Spaulding gives them a sinister tour and warns them of the superstitious history of the land, they're given directions that lead them to being run off the road and abducted by the mysterious Firefly family, who they discover all too late are barbaric homicidal psychopaths who relish in the theatrics of their obscenity and sadism. To be honest, the plot is basically the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 with a Satanic funhouse twist, as it follows most of that film's familiar beats, while leaning into black comedy and immense political incorrectness, as we're held hostage to an increasingly macabre nightmare that only gets worse. In fact, if the comparison to Texas Chainsaw 2 isn't abundantly apparent, actor Bill Moseley plays a villain in both films, with the trilogy itself fully embracing archetypical typecasting to really sell the abrasive seediness of the world. Now, I will admit I am going to be pretty broad about the family in this video because I want to save much of that discussion for The Devil's Rejects, which I feel stands out as Rob Zombie's most realized film because it's where he started to show a slightly more mature grasp of this somewhat overarching theme of moral rejection. As it stands, House of a Thousand Corpses was pretty much Rob Zombie's calling card, where within the first 5 minutes, the film makes it explicitly clear what it's going for, with the emphasis on, let's call it, flavorfully ugly absurdism and shock value. Now, let me be clear, I know I've been a bit of a sassy bitch up to this point, but none of this is actually a knock at the film, because the one detail I especially love about it is how it feeds on your morbid curiosity with a rather understated creative choice, where purely on the surface, it has a cartoonishly exaggerated, farcically fantastical presentation that, as the movie progresses into more abject horror, insidiously reveals the gritty, grounded violence and sadism festering beneath it. The way I see it, the film adopts a grindhouse aesthetic to not only replicate an authentic pulpy exploitation B-movie you'd think would only be ever shown in a dodgy underbelly porno theater, but it uses grainy flash cuts, close-ups, intentionally choppy editing, surreal filters, and unconventional inserts to reflect the personality of its evil, where the stylization is a mask for the true reality buried behind it. Once that hyper-stylized artifice is largely gone, you're left with literal human rot and decay that transforms the tone of the film into a blunt, straight-faced splatter flick where the villains almost drop the theatrics completely. The film's two-faced aesthetic is firmly established in the opening, as an in-world classical movie marathon introduction draws us into its superficial theatricality that poorly conceals the true evil hiding behind it. Captain Spaulding effectively serves as a symbol of that mask, as he channels how serial killer John Wayne Gacy revised our perception of the clown as the malevolent wolf in sheep's clothing. After his television promo, we see Spaulding drop his goofy persona and start abrasively arguing with his employee, only for a sudden armed robbery to piss him off even more rather than create tension, as Spaulding shows no fear or hesitation in immediately lambasting the intruders before quickly and all too casually dispatching them himself. It's as equally deranged as it is wonderfully hilarious in showing how null and void any threat is to these characters, with small details like Spaulding sniffing the smoke from the barrel of the gun to show how far outside the realm of morality and normality we truly are. I will explore this more directly in Devil's Rejects, but the corrupted twist here is that the Firefly family are technically the protagonists. It is both an inversion of moral logic and a subversion of the hero's journey, where the first film sees them relishing in their domain, while the sequels show their survival put under threat. It's partly why the innocent kids are given less attention overall. While it's obvious Rob Zombie was just fundamentally far more interested in his villains and their iconography, the second half makes it abundantly clear that the good guys never win, but more on that later. Hell, when we see the group drive past the sign early on that says God is dead, that pretty much says it all. It's a world where immorality is basically rewarded, and we'll see this more acutely when we discuss the questionable hero, Sheriff Wydell, in the Devil's Rejects. Now, if some of you are asking, Ryan, why would you watch a trilogy where the protagonists represent the vilest extremities of human depravity? Well, it's because the Fireflies are so hateably watchable, partly thanks to the trashy Tarantino-esque quips in camp, but also mainly by the fact that every actor brings a fully committed performance that gives even the most hollow and completely insignificant characters so much memorable flavor. There's little in the way of nuance or complexity, but as a film this rustically cartoonish, it's fitting that every character acts like they're the main appeal of the story to tie into the constant delusions of grandeur exhibited by a family of psychopathic artists. The late Sid Haig as Captain Spaulding is naturally the biggest standout by far, as his character became a cult icon for the series. However, he's actually not in the first film all that much, which says a lot about the energy and ghoulish charisma he brings to the performance. Now, the key detail that Spaulding explains to the group in the first act is that of the legend of S. Quentin Quarry, aka Dr. Satan, a master surgeon who interned at the now-defunct Willows County Mental Hospital that was nicknamed Weeping Willows due to the never-ending cries of pain from its patients, who were experimented on by Dr. Satan in a bid to create a race of superhumans. After vigilante locals hung Dr. Satan on a tree, his body soon mysteriously disappeared, and thus the land surrounding the Firefly house is suspected to be haunted, leaving to question if there are potential supernatural forces at play. The film rightfully, especially in the context of the sequels, is very ambiguous about this aspect, but Spaulding's sensational dramatization on the matter, which also includes fetishizing real-life serial killers like Albert Fish and Ed Gein, goes back to what I said about superficiality concealing the real evil beneath it, as this uncertainty adds a layer of tension going forward. Again, you're lulled into this campy, fantastical B-movie exaggeration, only for it to aggressively pull the rug from under you, when we then see a stark contrast to the sadism of several cheerleaders being barbarically tortured and mutilated behind the scenes. In fact, the sequels double down on this by forgoing the stylization and immediately leaning into realism, since the Firefly family begin the sequel fully unmasked and thus unfiltered in their mayhem. Once you witness what's lurking in the shadows, there is no going back. The second half of the film drops the act and becomes less implicit in its nature. After the group gets taken captive, we cut to Denise's father Don, a retired cop, calling the local sheriff about his daughter's disappearance and requests a search. This chapter coldly compounds Zombie's vision for this world, as it ends up being a really diabolical red herring, where we spend a decent amount of time getting to know Denise's sympathetic and loving father Don, the boldly determined Lieutenant Wydell, who will come back into play in the sequel, and his angsty deputy Nash, played by the king himself, Walton Goggins. Of course Walton Goggins is in this. After they find the group's car in an empty field, along with a mutilated cheerleader cheerleader in the trunk, the story begins echoing shades of the Manson family hysteria by briefly morphing into a satanic panic crime thriller, only for them to eventually arrive at the Firefly family home and get jarringly shot dead the moment they figure out something is wrong. It literally does not hesitate to pull the trigger on this entire subplot. I really respect it as a devious middle finger to the audience, as it even lingers on Walton Goggins crying on his knees for his life for a good full fucking minute before he is finally killed by Otis, one of the main villains across the series, who gloriously prolongs the execution to soak in the misery. Echoing what I said earlier, in this trilogy, evil always wins, and there is a cruel, unceremonious quality to most of the deaths, as the family just find even more ghoulish ways to intensify the suffering of the survivors. For example, besides the fact that Denise first awakens in the house to discover that one of her friends is already long dead after being mutilated alive and turned into a fucking merman, alluded to in Spaulding's television promo, Otis flays Denise's father's skin and mockingly wears his face to perform an incestuous roleplay with her. Now, there is somewhat of a loose motivation behind the carnage, as the family soon take the survivors to a well to basically present them as a sacrificial offering to Dr. Satan, who Denise previously has visions about being resurrected. The other girl, Mary, does briefly manage to escape, but at this point we're sort of in the funny games territory where the villains are just giddy and nonchalant and know that they're going to win anyway, as another main family member across the trilogy called Baby chases Mary to a mass grave and eventually viciously stabs her to death, coldly showing us the countless murders this family has gotten away with over the years, as Mary falls distraught that her situation will inevitably be no different. This brings us to the admittedly underwhelming climax, where Denise ends up venturing through the underground alone and discovers what seems to be the remnants of the Willows Asylum, but still leaving it somewhat ambiguous over how much of this is actually real or perhaps a gateway to hell. After scraping past several patients that seem more like lost souls, she eventually finds her boyfriend Jerry being violently experimented on by the elusive Dr. Satan, and I honestly expected more from this because I think it regresses too much back into the funhouse scare attraction theatrics as opposed to some eldritch demonic evil that extends far beyond what the Firefly family are capable of. The thing is, it's still heightened and grotesque, sure, but the family has already stolen the show in terms of sadism and brutality, so I think it needed to be more abstract and twisted than it ultimately is. You could say Rob Zombie just wanted to include a Hellraiser sequence when Denise is then chased out of the lab by a disfigured man called Earl, who much earlier in the film is explained to be the husband of Mother Firefly, and went missing after attempting to burn down the family home because he believed it was possessed with spirits, and ultimately got caught in his own fire, as did his very tall son Tiny. I guess you could say it sort of plays into a bastardized vision of the occult without ever confirming the extent of the otherworldliness, which the sequels then outright omit to reinforce the nature of evil being evil because fuck you, it's evil, and oftentimes is simply as senseless as it seems. Denise soon escapes, but is then conveniently picked up by Captain Spaulding, who, dun dun dun, of course is part of the family, as Otis appears in the back seat and incapacitates her, as she awakens in Dr. Satan's operating table. The end. Or is it? I mean, of course it is. She's so gonna fucking die. House of a Thousand Corpses is a rough around the edges first film, but I think there are a lot of conceptually strong stylistic choices, particularly the juxtaposition between dreamlike nightmare and brutal realism, and the bold choice to completely strip the story of any form of heroism. Next week we will be discussing The Devil's Rejects, which is a very different film tonally, to the point I'd argue you could skip House of a Thousand Corpses completely and jump straight into The Devil's Rejects without much issue, but I'll save my explanation until then. Also, hi, Ryan from the future again. Thanks again to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring this video and helping to keep the lights on because, oh boy, YouTube has not been too kind recently. Remember to use my link in the description to get an 84% discount plus 4 free months, along with a risk-free 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 customer support. As always, if you have any thoughts on the films, please leave them in the comments below, as well as any requests for future videos. Stay safe, stay away from fried chicken and gasoline, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye. His filmmaking track record is hold on, move the fucking for the where's the fucking lens? There it is. Okay. Jesus Christ, what the fuck did I write? Stop. Jesus, I must have been in a fucking weird mood when I wrote that. Forever to begin. Fucking nailed it. Which is not Ryan. Bloody hell. Sorry about that. Bran, read the fucking script. Please leave them. I realize that I am struggling to say a word correctly. Thank fuck. Ah!